Let's get into some trick-or-treat shite. Howdy, folks. Welcome to Apocalyptic, and it's a Monday. It's a Monday. I'm doing a Monday show. Back on the Monday schedule. Feels so good. It is nice to get back on. I knew I was going to do it at some point. Now the task is just to keep it on the Mondays, and then I got to do a Thursday too. But it's easier to do a Thursday when I do a Monday. When I do a show right in the middle of the week, you know, it's too close to either end to do another show. So Monday, good. So we should have a Monday and Thursday. And let's see if I can keep that on schedule. Thanks to Gary for pointing out that I think our 1 year is November 8th. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. We should do something. Let's meet somewhere. Let's all kind of hang out, have a beer, and food that's not good for us. I wish we could. That would be great. I don't know if I thought I had enough listeners, we would do a Zoom or something like that. Everybody kind of hang out. Don't think we're ready for those yet. I do want to say thanks to the people who said they liked the show last week. Got a few comments. That's cool. I think it was the longest show that I've done. And now I can't remember what I did. But hey, it's there. That's the thing. All right, here's something that's kind of griping me right now. I don't like starting the show out with gripes, but this is just I just want to let you know, if you don't know, this is what you can expect. So I occasionally, just like everybody, you get a little thing, something, some kind of thing that bothers you, you know, vision thing, hearing thing, skin thing. I don't know, just something that starts happening on your body or to your body or with your body, whatever, just like it has since the time you were a small person. And now what happens is I will get something and I'll be like, oh, that's weird. That's something new. I haven't felt that before. Wonder what that is. And then I'll get online and I will look it up and it'll say, usually as a result of getting older. Usually as a result of aging, usually as a result of being an old man. That's what I'm seeing. More and more that's happening. I don't know. I think it's weird. I try not to get caught up in all that old stuff. It's entertaining to a certain extent. You know, you have to be able to appreciate it. I think I can laugh at it. But you have to be aware of it. It's going on. I think about people, you know, in advanced age, more advanced than me. You know, my time may be tonight. I don't know. When I say time, I mean like expiration date. Could be tonight. But as you go along in this life, you get closer to it. So if you make it to 90s, if you make it to hundreds, you're closer than ever. And I often wonder what the mentality, I hope to find out, by the way, what the mentality is if you're, let's say you're 100, because you know you don't have another 10 years, probably don't have another 20, you know you're not going to have another 20. So it's like, I don't know what kind of psychology that involves. What kind of mind psych happens? What's going on? It's like every day, do you think it's your last day? Do you just like live in the moment? I kind of feel like that's it, because I feel like that's happening more to me. I feel like I live more in the moment as I get older, because you don't want to dwell on it. Why would you dwell on it? And there's not much you could do about it. So just live in the moment. That's all I'm saying. Unless you get something wrong with your body, then it's just like you're old. You're old. Old things are happening. I do want to say really quick, hi, welcome to any new people out there. We tend to just kind of ignore you. We don't want to call attention to you. You're welcome. Just kind of come in, sit down, listen to the show. We're not going to do the little thing where everybody goes in a circle and introduces themselves. We're not going to make you raise your hand that you're the new person. These are the things that I hated when I was in school. I'm an introvert. I did not want attention, and it still happens. If I go to a meeting I'll go and I'll sit there and everybody will say, well, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. And then you get that kind of feeling of, oh my God, I want to leave. Just kind of a panic. I've learned how to fake it, now that I'm older, I can kind of pretend like it doesn't bother me. I can pretend like I got it under control. It's all an act, people. I'm just as scared and nervous when it happens now as I was when I was 6 years old in first grade. I hate it. I hate that kind of thing. And there are people who love it. They thrive. If you don't do it, they suggest it. They want people to look at them. They want people to know their name and what they do for a living. I don't want that, which is weird, you would think, because I'm a performer. I get in front of people. I do stuff. I just got finished doing storytelling, and that's what this show is about. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So let me explain what's going to happen here. I am going to, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to attach an audio version of the story that I told for this past couple weeks for a tour of Southern Ghosts at Stone Mountain Park in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And I told that story to a lot of strangers. They would come in and stand and watch me and listen to me do the story. And here's the weird thing is I would do it, and as a group of people was moving out, another group was moving in. I had to do it immediately. That's a weird feeling. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens because you right in the middle of the story, I'm like, did I just say this? Did I already tell them this? It feels weird. You get really disoriented, and I almost lost my voice, but it's kind of fun. It was a lot of fun, actually, and whether I do it next year, I don't know, but I was happy to do this. So I'm going to put that story at the end of this episode. If you have already heard it, if you were I know a couple people who listen to the podcast were at the storytelling event. If you were there and you don't want to hear it again, totally fine. Don't care. That just stop at that point. You don't have to listen anymore of it. I have posted some versions online if you've already heard those or listened to them or whatever. I don't expect that you'll have to listen to the rest of it. But here's what I want people. If people like that story and they want to know more about it, how the story came into being and everything, that's what this is going to be about. I'm going to do a little history of that story and some other things too. For instance, I want to talk a little bit about what I find scary. So I think I did a show about this at one point, so I'm not going to go too far into that. But most of the stories that I like to write, and I've been writing horror stories for a little while, mostly thanks to the podcasts that I've done. If you want to hear some of them, you can go to my my YouTube channel. It's just Rick Baldwin, and you can dig up some of my past horror stories that I have written. And also on my own personal website, I think some of my horror stuff is up there. And so what you'll probably notice is a lot of the stories that I write kind of take place in the South, or a lot of times maybe in Appalachia or something like that. And of course, that's where I was raised. I was raised East Tennessee, so right there in Appalachia. And my family comes from up in the corner of Tennessee and Virginia, up in Cumberland Gap area up in there. And my great-grandparents had a big farm up there, and we used to go when we were kids and hang out. And I just saw a lot of country people, a lot of country stuff. And something about that is scary to me. Not all the way across the board. Obviously, there's some regular stuff, but there's an element of, I guess it's kind of gothic in a way, but just, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Like hillbilly gothic. I know that term's been used for other things, but it's kind of, there's something scary about it. And even today I was thinking, why is it scary? Why do I get frightened by that? I'm not the only one, I know. Even if you look in some of Stephen King's movies and novels take place in like very, very rural areas, remote areas, cornfields, things like that. There's something about it that's unknown, unexplained, and you get, especially, not everybody lives up there, obviously, and so when you go up there, you're kind of out of your element, and that it's that same kind of, I think, scary feeling that you see in Deliverance when they're just out having a good time and they wander into someone else's territory, and this someone else is not someone you run into, and things happen. I'm not going to do spoilers, but I'm just going to say, I think that's part of what it is. It's like you're in an element that isn't yours. You don't know what's around the corner, because when you get into Appalachia, there's so much terrain, whether it's mountains and hills, and then you find, there's just like remote buildings and houses here and there. You don't know what's in there. It's scary. And I think that's what it is. There is that. Even when I lived there, there's kind of always an element of what's around the corner. Who are these people? What goes on in their house at night? And I've carried that with me my whole life. I just have that. I still today, when I pass by some house out in a remote country, the house is just sitting there alone, and there's one tiny little glowing light in the window, and I'm always like, what is going on in there? What if I walk in there, what's going to happen? What's it going to smell like? What's it going to look like? Is it going to be bodies on the floor? Is it going to be blood? What is it? Does it smell horrible? Does it smell like dogs? Does it smell like alcohol? Does it smell like moonshine? Dust? What is it? All those things, it's kind of a sensory overload, because I grew up in that. And there's so much of all senses out in the country. And so I'd like to incorporate that, and just, I think the South has this reputation of being friendly. Everybody knows everybody else, and everybody's kind of, but that's not always the case. There's always some scary stuff lingering around. There's people that you don't know anything about, and you don't know if you want to know anything about. And I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated a little bit about kids growing up and trying to figure things out, and being scared because they don't know what this building is that they've seen their whole life. Who used to live there? What's the history? All that stuff is very interesting to me. So when I was approaching this story, and it's called The Specter of Red Dog Road. I've mentioned it before previously on the show. This event, a tour of Southern Ghosts, happens every year at Stone Mountain, Georgia. And I knew that. I kind of was interested in participating. So I just sort of sent them a message and just said, hey, I'm available if you happen to need it. And just so happened this year, they did need it. And so I was like, oh, cool. And they furnished me with a story which I did not like at all. In fact, I kind of hated it. And so I thought, well, I could write a better story than this. So I immediately wrote a story, and I wrote this story in I think I got the idea in one night, and then I wrote it the next day. It's a short story. It's about 6 minutes long, but yeah, I wrote it really quick, and I was looking for. I like to have a basis of fact in the stories. That makes them scary, because if everything is not real, it's easy to dismiss it. But if you could say, some of this really happened, or based on a true story, or something like that, it makes it scarier, because the average person doesn't know what parts of it is real and what parts is not real. And that's cool when you're doing horror stories. So I wanted there to be at least a part of that, element of that. And just doing some research on like scary stories and tales, and, trying to get in the mood, I discovered that there is, in fact, this little dirt road in Harlan, Kentucky called Red Dog Road. And the things I talk about in the story actually are things people see: lights in the trees and footsteps on the road, and a ghost of a coal miner. And there's a story about this coal miner's wandering around because he was killed, I think, by accident by another coal miner who killed him by accident. So I don't know. I just thought that's what's the story there? Let's make a story. Let's invent the story. What's the coal miner's issue? How did he get there? Why is he there? Why did he get killed? So that was the kernel of making this story, was developing that coal miner story. And that's what I did. I liked putting in a lot of the elements, and my family, being from where they are, I listen to a lot of Appalachian dialect, really heavy. You can call it hillbilly twang, and I don't mind calling it that. I embrace that. I think you could still hear it today up in that area. I know some. If if you're from Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, up in there, Tennessee, even, you hear it, you know it, and sometimes I think that adds to the element of horror. It's almost like a different language, right? It's like, who are these people? Where do they come from? Why are they speaking like that? And so it makes it scarier. So I listened to that as I was growing up. I listened to that part of my family when we would get together for family events. I would listen to them talk, and they would just sit and chat about different things. And I would hear things I didn't like. One of the things I didn't put in the story, but I wanted to, is, and I've heard this my whole life living in East Tennessee. A lot of people will say hit instead of it. They'll put an H in front of it, hit. And I never understood that when I was growing up. People would just say, hit's over there. And why would you say hit? And it wasn't until I got out of college even and did a little research on Appalachian dialect that I realized that actually comes from Old English. Old English dialect, I guess, has the H in front of it, and they would say hit. And it survived in the mountains. And a lot of the dialect is Celtic. It's Scottish or Irish or Old English. And it stuck up there in the mountains, and it stayed in this little pocket, and it developed into its own little dialect. But it has the roots into those other dialects from Europe. But I like to put in authentic dialect, and I tried to use my best. Appalachian hillbilly accent, which is really kind of how I talked before I went to theater school. There was a little bit of authenticity when I was growing up. And a lot of my family still speaks that way. And half the people I grew up with speak that way. So it's a way to kind of honor that, to kind of, color that story with authentic voice. And I hoped I did the best. I tried to do the best I could. I listened to it a couple times. I was like, oh, wow, that sounds fake. Because I always listen to movies with Appalachian dialect and Southern dialect. And I'm like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. That's really not even authentic. Sometimes it's just perfect. But a lot of times it's not. And one of the things that irritates me is when they do like a Alabama accent in Kentucky. And it's like, no, those are two different things. You have the South, and then you have Appalachia, you have hillbilly, which is more of a twang. And really, in some ways, I think it's a lot more closer to the Celtic language. But I don't think a lot of Hollywood understands that. They might be getting closer to it now. But to bring that authenticity and just the way people talk and some of the things I heard growing up, I was so happy to kind of add that to it and put that in it, and sort of a tribute to the people I grew up with, the stories that I listened to, and all of that kind of stuff. So, and just another horror story that's local. Now, just the technical aspects of the story. There were certain things that were required in doing the story. First of all, they had to be 5 minutes long. The version I'm attaching to this that you'll hear coming up, I think, is 6 minutes. I did draw it out a little bit, but to make it scarier. But in the storytelling event, 5 minutes was it. You had to have the number 38 in the story because this is the 38th season of the storytelling festival event, whatever. 38. So you had to put the number 38, and you will hear that. Creative ways to kind of put those things in. You had to have an animal, which my story just was about an animal, so that was no problem. And then they wanted you to use somewhere in the story all of the five senses, somehow, somewhere, all five senses, which also happened too. But that was kind of, that's how the story came about. And I like the fact that obviously what people see on Red Dog Road is suggestive. Suggestive, is that right? What am I saying? Subjective. That's a word that wouldn't come out of my mouth. This is when I should edit the podcast, and I don't. Subjective. People see things, and you can't prove it. People just say, I see it. So you can't say it's true, but it is true that people say they do see that. Now, I don't believe in ghosts, but I can't say they didn't see something. How do I know? So I like the fact that it has those elements of things that really has some truth. They report that they have seen those. And I hope that I honored that. I was a little nervous. It's not my tradition. It's not my story. I'm not from Harlan. My dad was born in Middlesboro, Kentucky, which is really close to Harlan. My family grew up in Sneedville, Tennessee, up in the Cumberland Gap, and all that's really, really close. So it's kind of my neighborhood, my family's neighborhood. But those stories aren't mine. Those are local people up there, and I kind of hijacked their story a little bit. But I feel like I'm kind of attached to the area, but I want to do it right. I wanted to do it respectfully. I don't think I ruined anybody's traditions or anybody's stories. And that's that. I think that's all I need to say about it. I will say, if you are in an event or anything where you want to tell this story, feel free to. There is a script to it on my website, and anybody could do this in public, no royalties. You don't have to pay me. I would just like you to mention who the author is, but you could do it free of charge. That's fine. You can play this for people if you want to. It's just to make people happy, to have fun, to kind of be scared and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're going to do. All right. I think that's all I need to say. I will say, because I started to say it, then I forgot. We do have a listener line, 678-348-0008. Call that line. Tell me what you think of the story. If you want to tell me your own ghost stories, that's fine. It would be so cool if we could do a show of listener ghost stories, listener tales, scary things from the listeners. Just call up the line and tell something, and then we can play it this week. It'd be awesome. Do it. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I got to say. I think that's all I need to say. But anyway, thanks for listening to the show, people. I hope you enjoy this story. And maybe if you haven't heard it already, you get a little fried out of it, a little scared. So what we'll do is I'm going to go right into it, and then we won't end with the ending music. It'll be scary. You'll just stop right there. All right. All right. I'll see you on Thursday. Bye. Up in Harlan, Kentucky, there's an old back road called Red Dog Road. You don't ever want to get lost on it. Locals will tell you there's all kinds of unexplained stuff on that road at night. They seen strange red lights flickering tree to tree. Some heard footsteps walking around on that road, on the leaves. Worst of all, a lot of people say they seen the ghost of a haggard old coal miner holding his lantern just a crying and a hollering something fierce. Well, I'm here tonight to say all that stuff is true. I'm going to tell you the real story of the Specter of Red Dog Road. One summer, Eldon Parkey did some work for an old tobacco farmer just across the Tennessee border. Farmer paid Eldon a little bit, but he also traded him some tobacco, and he gave him this red dog that just showed up on the farm one day. Well, that dog was meaner than a two-headed snake, so the old farmer was more than happy to get rid of it. But Eldon loved that dog. He took it home, named it Red Dog. Eldon noticed Red Dog only had 38 of the regular 42 dog teeth. Well, he figured the other 4 of them must still be in some poor fellow's hind end, 'cause that dog would bite you just to see what you taste like. The story was, one bite from Red Dog would keep a man's soul from getting into heaven or hell. so didn't nobody ever want to pet it. And come to think of it, nobody ever wanted to pet Eldon either. But Eldon said, you know what, that's the way he liked it. Well, Eldon was actually a coal miner, and one day word got around town that Eldon had found a hunk of gold when he was working underground. Now, that kind of thing didn't normally happen in Kentucky, and anything of value you found was supposed to go back to the company. But Eldon stuck that gold rock in his lunch pail and took it back to his house. He put it in a steel lockbox. He set that box right beside Red Dog's bed. Wasn't nobody getting that gold. Most people around Harlan knowed Eldon kind of had a big mouth, and sure enough, he starts to bragging in town he's going to be a rich man. He took to wearing fancy smelling lotion and telling people he's fixing to buy a new milking cow, a shiny new pocket watch. Said he'd soon have a clean pair of breeches for every day of the week. Well, I reckon when R.T. Scoggins heard about it, he didn't like it one bit. R.T. was the foreman at the mine. He said that gold belonged to the mine. Eldon found it while he was on the mine's time and on the mine's property. So R.T. said that gold rock should be in a steel lockbox in the mine's office. Well, he decided he'd just better go take it back himself in person. So, one night while Eldon was at the church, R.T. grabbed his shotgun and a big old tater sack and snuck over to Eldon's place down in the holler. It was all dark, but R.T. looked through the front window. He scanned the room all careful-like. They could barely make out the silhouette of Red Dog over in the corner on a blanket. That steel lockbox was sitting right next to him. R.T. lifted his shotgun. He pointed it right at Red Dog. Red Dog didn't move an inch. R.T.'s finger squeezed that trigger. Boom! There wasn't no sign of Red Dog nowhere. R.T. didn't see any blood, so he figured he must have missed him. Red Dog got spooked and run off somewhere. Well, seemed as good a time as any to make his move, so R.T. ran into the house, grabbed that steel lockbox, and hightailed it out the door into the night. Well, y'all, I don't have to tell you, R.T. Scoggins didn't get 100 yards down the holler road when all he saw in front of him was a mess of red hair and dog slobber. I mean, Red Dog tore him up in ways ain't no one ever figured out how to put back together. Some people say they found pieces of R.T. over in Tennessee, maybe even Virginia. Of course, R.T. got more than just bit by Red Dog, so he ain't never getting nowhere near the other side of heaven or hell. His soul ain't doing nothing for eternity except wandering around Harlan, Kentucky, crying and hollering. So, you think you're brave enough? Grab your own shotgun and a old tater sack, and well, maybe you can get yourself a hunk of gold. Or you'll be keeping company for eternity with the shredded specter of R.T. Scoggins way out there on Red Dog Road.